I live in Long Island, and it is just so expensive here. Help me out. That's not...
Well, they know. Your zip code's on, your address is listed on the form, so it's
that's not special.
Yeah. By the way, so if you're just joining us on Facebook, we just had a stream interruption, which I can almost say without giggling. And now we're back. Please like, comment, and share, and get the word out. Okay. Anything else on the two differences? Differences in the forms?
Yeah, there are probably lots, but
that you feel like you need to.
I'll let you.
Expound
Well,
on?
yes, and there is also called a supplemental questions section that is also on the CSS profile, which allows
For your child to fill out.
Yeah, which allows individual schools that you're applying to ask their own specific additional questions besides what's asked on the CSS profile and the FAFSA. So when you see that, only that school who is asking that question will get the answer to that question. And those are very nosy.
Yeah, very invasive. Okay, so here's what in general, here's what counts when they determine how much you can afford. There are 70-something factors. I'm not going to list them all off. We're going to go over the main ones. But this nomenclature is the EFC, Estimated Family Contribution. That is the key term in college financial aid. Income far and away is the most important factor. There is no income ceiling or maximum amount that once you cross it, you can't qualify. We can give you rules of thumb, but the reason there is no income ceiling number is because of all these other factors. So when we talk about income, by the way, that means all income. It means not only your W-2 wages, or if you're self-employed, it doesn't mean only that, plus your business income. It means untaxed income. It means contributions to certain things, like retirement accounts or whatever, and
child support.
Right, child support
Social
received.
Security benefits that are untaxed that are received.
So income's the most important thing, and in the formulas, income is penalized, and I'll explain that, between 22 to 47%. So what that means is on a sliding scale, if you make an extra $10,000, your eligibility is reduced by $2,200 to $4,700. You're penalized 22 to 47% on your income. Next is savings, and it's not necessarily how much, but where you have the money. So there are different places to save for college. There are 529s, and the question with the 529 is not necessarily if it counts against you in the formulas, it's how much. You just gave the answer. So, I love when you do that. So, generally speaking, the 529 is treated as a parent asset, which is better, treated more benignly in the formulas than a child asset, because parent assets are penalized at roughly 5% and change. Meaning, if you have $100,000 in a parent's name, you will increase your contribution. You want it lower. That's synonymous with saying you will be penalized. You will be penalized $5,640 if you have $100,000 saved in your names. If you have that same $100,000 saved in your child's name, the penalty is 20% or 25% or $20,000 or $25,000 per year. So it's a matter of where, not how much. The 529 in general, right? So in other words, you're being punished for doing the right thing, for living.
So change the name immediately.
Well, we'll talk about the legal strategies, but I appreciate that. Where you're going with that one.
Instinct.
529, just to round out that discussion, for the most part, and these rules changed in 2009. The 529 is treated as a parent asset, which is better. However, many colleges that tend to be the ones that take the CSS profile form that Pearl mentioned earlier, we suspect, and there's not a published formula, but we just see sometimes financial aid offers that we can't explain, and this is also a suspicion shared by other of our colleagues in other parts of the country. We suspect that the 529 is still treated as a child asset or something between a child and parent asset, penalized more severely by many CSS profile schools. So what we do a lot in our practice, and this does not work for everyone, that's my recovering attorney disclaimer, but what can work is for families who have money saved in the wrong places, they just find this out at the 11th hour. Sometimes it makes sense to move the money out of a bad bucket, quote unquote, into something that penalizes you less or something that doesn't penalize you at all. So Child stuff penalizes you way more than parent stuff, and now I'm going to talk about the stuff that doesn't penalize you at all, unless Pearl.
Is going to interrupt.
Yes.
Okay.
Or you have questions.
Two comments.
In that order.
I just wanted to point out that student assets are penalized from $1, whereas parents are afforded what's called an asset threshold allowance based on your own family metrics, how many kids you have, the age of the parents, etc. There's going to be a number that the Department of Ed will ascribe on your FAFSA as your ceiling, as your asset ceiling, up to which, and let's just call that because it's all different for every family, but let's say it's around $20,000, that first $20,000 that the parents have is shielded from incurring a financial aid penalty. So it's the dollar after that threshold up that you would incur the financial aid penalty. As compared to the student, from $1, it's penalized.
Income actually works the same way. So income, you're not penalized from $1. It's kind of like marginal tax rates. You have this certain amount that's excluded on your income, and then everything above that, 22 to 47%. For kids, it's from $1, and it's 50%.
And one other comment about the 529, and just in case this was a strategy any of you think might be a great idea. As far as your younger children, the 529 that you represent on the FAFSA and the CSS profile is the amount of 529 you have for all children, not just the child who is applying to college. So it will not help you to take it from your child applicant and give it to your 8th grader. It counts. All 529 for your entire family counts and is the number that should be listed if you have it.
Even though they're a separate account?
Even though they're totally separate people and the child,
Okay.
doesn't matter. They don't.
Well, here's the reason. On the FAFSA, for the most part, it's a parent asset,
Okay.
so it doesn't matter. But on the CSS profile, they want more detail. Who gets what?
How about if you own a company, but you have a W-2? Is that just the income you want to give them?
No.
No.
So for business owners, well, let me get to that.
Sounds like it might be.
No, it's much more invasive. It depends on what schools you're applying to. But hold that thought. Let's get through what counts against you and what doesn't count against you, and then we'll talk about there's a business owner exemption which ties into your question.
Okay.
So pretty much everything that counts against you is stuff that you have access to, that you can that's liquid. What doesn't count against you, Pearl already mentioned one. We actually talked about two different things in passing. So on the FAFSA, the main form that 4,000 colleges take. There aren't just 20 colleges, even though guidance counselors may recommend the same 20 to every kid. There's actually more colleges. Just trust us on that if you don't believe me.
Of all shapes and sizes.
Okay. They're usually square. Okay. So the value of your primary residence is exempt on the FAFSA, not the CSS profile. The CSS profile views the primary residence as potentially an asset with the equity in the asset that could potentially be used to pay for college. So that's one exemption. The next one, retirement accounts. We mentioned that before. On the FAFSA, completely exempt. On the profile, ostensibly completely exempt, but disclosable. So any type of retirement account does not penalize you. That being said, contributions that you make to your retirement account get added back to your income.
Even though they are untaxed for
Right.
for income tax purposes.
And just to help you remember this, I think the theory behind that is that you may be able to lower your adjusted gross income by making contributions, but you're not also able to double dip for financial aid purposes. It's not. You can't get two bites at the apple. It's one or the other. And the next one is annuity. Annuity products are exempt entirely on the FAFSA. On the profile, they make a distinction between retirement and non-retirement annuities. Non-retirement annuities are not exempt on the profile. And then the fourth class is insurance products, insurance with cash value. So a couple comments on this because, again, we mentioned this before, sometimes people can move money around and improve their eligibility just by shifting money out of one bucket to another. What you have to be careful about are the negative consequences, as well as understanding what the potential benefits are. So what that means generally is there could be tax implications for selling stuff, there could be penalties for withdrawing a 529 early, and you have to look at the numbers because I would say more often than not the penalties aren't so bad. in the abstract, you don't want to be penalized for anything, but you have to just understand this. And then the next the next thing to think about is, well, what am I putting my money into? How do those products work? Do I have to tie my money up, or can I get access to it? What are the fees? That type of stuff. And just to make a blanket statement, what we can say, I think, speaking for Pearl, which hardly ever happens, is that there's a lot of really, really bad products out there, and there might be 2 or 3 in any given year that are good. So you have to be very, very careful about that. Again, I'm not a financial guy, but I know enough to hurt myself, but we work either with the client's financial advisor or we refer them, but you have to be very, very careful, because the last thing you want to do is to do all these changes. A year later, something unforeseen happens, and you need to get the money back or something, and you don't want to be told something like, "Oh, well, don't you remember there's a $10,000 penalty," and something like that. So just be very, very careful about this. My last comment on this is that, just to repeat what I said before, it doesn't work for everyone. I think 25-ish% of families can improve their eligibility for college aid this way, if I had to come up with an arbitrary percentage. So it's definitely not everyone in every room that we talk to, or even our clients. I think most of our clients don't qualify, frankly, for need-based aid. And if that's you, don't despair, because there's actually more merit-based money out there than need-based money.
Right.
That's sort of one of the dirty little secrets about this.
So and the only if you're at all unsure, where you fill out the forms and you submit them, because once you do that, the act of submitting those forms triggers each of those schools to prepare an award for you, whether that award is made up entirely of need-based aid, entirely of merit-based aid, or a combination of the two. So if you don't file forms, then it's a no. Then you're not getting any reduction off of your cost of attendance. If you submit them, you're increasing your chances.
So one point that you and our client made the other day was that you just don't know which. I mean, you can spend time researching which colleges want your financial aid forms in order to give merit money, because some do, many don't, but some do.
Right.
Or you can just file the forms and they'll tell you. So that's sort of our perspective on that. Any questions on this stuff before we talk about the business owner exemptions?
Should you meet with your financial planner to start discussing those changes if you needed to make them?
So the answer is yes, but most of the time they don't know this stuff, because this is a real specialized, area. So I would say, make that call with your financial planner. We're happy, of course, to talk to you. Our business cards are there. We'll mention at the end how to connect with us. But I would try that. Usually, I do a lot of these classes for financial planners. It's like a continuing education thing, and I'm working on one for accountants also. Yeah, I mean, they're so busy. They're so heavily regulated. They have so much that they have to keep abreast of. It's hard for them to look at. I mean, even the FAFSA, which is ostensibly the simple form, has 1,100 pages of regulations, and there's all these changes last year that we have to keep up on. So that's usually why a financial guy or an accountant may not understand this stuff. And frankly, a lot of times they give you really terrible advice that sabotages your eligibility, like save money in your kids' names.
Yeah.
And this is a great segue, actually, to our business owner.
Nice.
For example,
Thank you.
if you went to your financial planner, and I don't know how you're employed, but if you're a self-employed business owner and you're speaking with your financial planner, and one of the questions on the FAFSA and the CSS profile is, do you own a business, and how much is it worth? Well, so your financial advisor is familiar with your information, and he can crank out and tell you a value.
Let me tell the Tina story.
Okay.
Okay, so this kind of, well, we have all these stories. We don't always remember them all, but so we have a client. We live in Glenhead. We have a client who lives there also. She's got a business there, and she was actually 2 years ago, I guess, she was referred to us by someone else who owns a business, who's not, at that point, was not a client. Mm-hmm. He lives around here, actually. And what happened with her, this was in April, I think, of probably 2014. She'd gone through the financial aid process herself, filled out all the forms, including the questions about owning a business, and her daughter had gotten in to NYU and I think Syracuse and a bunch of other private colleges, and she struck, in terms of money, she struck out across the board. She got zero anywhere. So she called me up, I guess kind of, as a desperate, Hail Mary type of thing, and said, can you help me? And I said, you've already gone through the process. I don't think there's really much I can do. I wish I could. And, maybe next year we can work on something. But once you've kind of, let the financial aid office, I was going to say under your skirt, but I don't know if that's appropriate. Behind the curtain, it's you're kind of creating a precedent. So I said, well, yeah, I don't know what I can do. She said, well, I'll pay you to review my forms because I feel like I did something wrong. So I was looking through her forms, and I noticed on there that on the question that asked for the value of her business, her mistake was that she used what Pearl was describing. She used a real world value, so a common sense value, because she and her husband own a contracting business. It's a substantial business. We just were power walking by there. She was in front last week, and very competitive. Okay, you don't need to know this, but she's very competitive, and they have all this equipment, all these trucks, and they have to make. I believe they have all these equipment lenders that they have to make annual filings and disclosures to, in order just to remain current with all the covenants they have to sign when they borrow and they lease equipment. They do the excavation work for Nassau County. They're a big firm. So I think what they used, to fill out the form for on the part where or asked for the value, was that value that she disclosed on her common sense banker forms. So the problem is that you don't use common sense in financial aid. Financial aid has its own rules, its own set of rules, and in not so fine print, but buried, I guess, in those directions on how to answer that question, I'll paraphrase. It says, if you employ fewer than 100 employees, the value of your business is zero.
Wow.
Yeah. Are you gonna fire a bunch of people?
Don't have to.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So I saw that look in your face. I was like, yeah.
I have a business and I also work for someone.
Okay.
Yeah. Very
So
common.
I have a software engineering company, which
Yeah.
is mostly bodies
Right.
that we loan out for fees.
Live.
Live, yes. And there's not much hardware. We don't have any hardware. We don't have any office.
Yeah.
So how do I value that, or do I value it?
How many bodies do you have?
It varies, and they're not employees.
What's the
They're
most?
My wife and myself.
So not that
That
close
sounds
to
like
100.
zero.
It's zero.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then zero.
By the way, publicly, be very optimistic about your business. You
of
like
course.
Donald Trump, just brag about yourself. but negative. But on financial aid, you want to feel like a
Zero.
pauper. Yeah.
I mean, it's a body shop. I mean, everyone knows the term. It's a body shop in software engineering. But
Okay.
they just we collect a fee for loaning them.
Referring
out.
people. All right, good, fine.
Right, and that's very typical, whether someone's self-employed and they receive a W-2 wage from their own business, that would go just in one place on the financial aid form as your W-2 income, as opposed to the net business income you may make, or that would go in a different place on the form. That's other taxable income, or it's pulled from your line 12 and line 17, however your
Schedule
business
C or
return
whatever, yeah.
is filed, right. However, the value of your business, which is yet a different question, if you have fewer than 100 employees, the value is zero,
So you're
period.
gonna put a zero there.
Zero.
Okay.
Because that's what the federal rules tells
Okay.
you to do. And my point in bringing up, okay, on its face, the form may seem straightforward because it's, you can read it, it's in English, and there's a box for you to just put a number. Well, so that's what Tina, our client, had done. She took a
By the
value,
way,
discussed
you know what
it with
we
her
didn't do?
financial planner, and
Accountant.
Put $4 million down.
put down a sensible answer.
Would you like to know what happened, Tina?
Yeah.
By the way, 'cause this is the
Oh,
best
yeah.
part of the story. We
Right.
forgot about it.
Sorry.
Right. So NYU and the other schools reassessed her award and gave her NYU gave her $25,000. In year 2, they gave her another $25,000. So that was just for writing a little appeal letter and refiling the forms. That is a pretty good result for her.
Yeah.
So We're not saying this happens, for everyone, but you just have to understand that this. I want you to remember the story because we see stuff like that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So don't make a little silly mistake. You have to be very careful because everything is explained there, but it's very easy to overlook. And she didn't make a mistake. She's smart. She's not like a dummy. And we have accountants as clients.
But if you
one
don't
just called
know
us in
that
panic
little
yesterday.
nuance,
Yeah. A lot of
Why
people
would
are very
you think?
smart with paperwork and stuff like that. So if you're one more time, if you're just joining us on Facebook, because I see people coming on and off, please like, comment, and share, and post your questions in the comments, and you will be monitoring them. All right. So what else? Business owners. So here's a rule of thumb for income. Getting back to that. So in terms of the factors, so we talked about income, we talked about savings, we talked about the business owner exemption. If you have a small business. Now, another big factor in financial aid is the number of children you have in college at the same time. That can really impact positively your contribution that they expect you to be able to make, your EFC. So if you file the forms in your first year when you have only one kid in school, and let's say you make $200,000 as an income, you're probably not going to qualify at most colleges. You definitely won't qualify at state schools, but you won't qualify except for the very elite colleges for private colleges. But because your estimated family contribution might be $60,000 or something, just on your income alone, not to mention your savings and other things. However, if all financial aspects stay the same, and in 2 years you have another child headed to college, or you have twins, or you have quintuplets, like one of our clients, which we recommend as a strategy, incidentally, then what happens is that contribution they expect, the $60,000, gets split between or among your other kids. So that $60,000 becomes a $30,000 contribution, which makes you all of a sudden eligible at that school that wasn't going to give you any money 2 years ago. And that's a big problem or big mistake that people make, is they think, I'm not going to qualify at all, so why do I bother? And then they go to something like this and they're like, okay, I'll do the forms and whatever, and then they get nothing, and they're like, wow, that's 26 hours of my life I'll never get back with all the paperwork. I hate those guys. I'm never pearl, it's usually me. And then, but the problem is that if in 2 years or a year or later another kid goes to college and they don't apply, again, they're sabotaging themselves. So that's another big factor in financial aid. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And just in case you are unaware, the financial aid forms are filled out annually for the next year of aid.
So when your second child or whatever goes to college,
you'd be filling out a
another
form for your
and then you're
renewing
gonna
student.
add that in,
Correct.
so your EFC becomes lower.
Right. You would anyway, because the aid is awarded for that next year, and that's it. The next year you would reapply for aid, and in terms of whether or not awards stay the same for all 4 years, all other things being equal, depends on the school. And it is something you can ask directly of the financial aid award, especially the financial aid office at any given school. If you're given a very healthy award, merit, need, you want to make sure, all things being equal, is this award going to continue for the 4 years of school?
Right, and
what determines that? In other words,
it's them exclusively in their control, not your control. However, some schools have more of a nasty reputation of baiting and switching, of front loading, and it's totally up to you to research that. That's all sort of out there. Mm-hmm. And what you want to look at specifically is what is the average award for freshmen versus the average award for all undergrads. That's, if it's a wide gap, a wide delta between those two, you might be in trouble. You want a narrow gap, all things being equal. Yeah. Getting back to the income thing. So just to wrap up that discussion. So as a general rule of thumb, for private colleges, the closer you get to your income of $200,000, the harder it is to qualify with one kid in school. That number for state schools might be $60,000 to $70,000. Once you get above that, it's a lot harder to qualify. Again, because state schools don't have too much to give other than federal money. They don't have their own endowments. Mm-hmm. Now that brings up what are the other sources of money? And there's merit scholarships out there. The big money is from the college endowments themselves, because they, as was pointed out before, they are in the business of classing up their rankings, and they want to attract kids who are going to help them, but with higher grades and higher scores, to improve their rankings. So occasionally you'll see public announcements like the University of Wisconsin made this summer. They made really this, a two-part announcement. One is that they're going to be giving more merit scholarships to out-of-state out-of-state students. That's a trend that's been happening over the last few years as each state has its funding taken away by their respective state governments. There's not as much money out there as they used to have to be able to, run their colleges. So what they've done instead is looked out of the country for international students who are full price, and out of the state for residents, for non-residents, even if they're giving $10,000 to $15,000 off the top to a non-resident, they're still coming out way ahead compared to the resident tuition. And the second thing that Wisconsin said, which I thought was interesting, is they're going to be boosting merit scholarships inside their own state borders to their own residents, because they're sick and tired of their talented kids being poached by neighboring. That just shows you it happens. So it's a business. I mean, it's not so much about kids chasing colleges around. It's also about the colleges chasing the kids around. You have to remember that, because if you are strategic about this, and when you finalize your list of schools, which we think should be around 10 or 12 schools, but some kids apply to 30, I love seeing in that list a handful that compete with each other, a handful of colleges that compete with each other. So some are very easy to figure out, like Harvard versus Yale, or colleges in the same conference, whatever set of schools you're looking at. Others are you have to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive and more thinking about, such as schools that are reputable in certain areas that you think about majoring in, like communications, for example. Syracuse has a great communications program. Newhouse, so does USC. People don't think of them as rivals, but they are in that area. So that is very, very important. And just to show you, one of, again, many stories like this, although this is another extreme example. About 3 years ago, we had a client who got into Harvard and Yale, very bright kid. And Harvard and Yale are need-based. They don't offer any merit scholarships. So they look at the same financial aid forms at the CSS profile, and that's how they base their need-based award on. So this guy got into both schools, and Harvard gave an award in the low $30,000 range, and Yale gave 0. And here's where it gets stranger. His parents each were Yale alums, double legacy, and his dad was an adjunct professor at Yale, right? So the mom's panicking, and she's like screaming on the phone. And she's like, "What happened? What do you think happened?" And I'm like, "He must have pissed someone off. There's no logical explanation over there, right?" And she goes, "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, really, what we need to do is go to Yale and say, you're my number one choice. Here's another offer from that I want to show you, and we're being forced to consider it because of financial reasons." And there's more to it, but that's the gist of it. That's why I like having other offers from rival schools in our quiver. So I drafted for her, and she edited it up, and she goes, "Okay, should I send this to financial aid?" I said, "Well, yes, but I also want you to send it to admissions." And she said, "Wow, admissions, that's brilliant. I never would have thought of that." And I said, "Well, you went to Yale." And there was roughly 5 seconds where I felt kind of smug, because when I was at Wesleyan, which is 30 minutes away, but about 50 SAT points away, half the class had been rejected by Yale. So that was like about few seconds of superiority that I felt. Anyway, so Yale came back and reassessed their financial aid award and said, "Oh, we didn't mean 0.
Forced negotiation.
We didn't mean 0. Here's $40,000. Whoops. Yeah, every year.
How great.
Yeah, so she got that the second year too. Yeah,
Yes.
Ridiculous. So again, even though this stuff is formulaic, it's not only formulaic. The need is in the eye of the beholder, and if you're smart and strategic about this process, you'll do well. So that's one of the main things I just want to get across. It's a business. Treat it like a business. Be strategic. Don't wing it. The stakes are too high. You've got all this debt out there, $1.4 trillion. 50% of college grads don't have a job that requires a college degree. Who graduated in the last 2 years? They're working at Starbucks and Domino's and places like that. So you can't just wing it the way we could. We could afford to be, I think, a little more laissez-faire about it, but today's kids can't be, and that's why we have our firm. You had a question, and then
That
1, 2, 3.
That
Yeah.
$40,000 award was a need award, right?
Yeah,
And that was,
ostensibly need, right?
Right.
Because they don't give merit.
And how does that compare with the total cost of going to Yale for a year? Is that 50%?
It was about 2/3 off. I think it was about at
Yeah.
the time 60,000. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
Right.
yeah.
Wow.
And the parents, they lived in the city. They made money. They weren't paupers at all. They were 6-figure earning families.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were Yale grads.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's very
And
important.
back, yeah.
So when they're in the application process, do the schools have the ability to find out or do you disclose what other schools you're applying to?
So that's a good question. So how do other schools know where you're applying? It used to be the case that when you filed a FAFSA, this is another change that happened last year.
Yeah,
Every school
couple
could see
years
it.
ago.
No, I think it was literally in September. Shut up, Pearl. Not in front of everyone. All right.
Sorry.
So who cares when it was, really? Don't split hairs with me.
This is the way it is now.
Right. We never liked this at home, though. So now that's gone. That doesn't happen anymore. The schools can't see each other. But when you appeal, that's when I like to show the actual offer. Here it is. And I don't say, "What can you do for me?" It's like, "Yo," it's not like that. It's more like, "You're my first choice school. We really want to come here, and here are the reasons why we think she's going to be a great fit and whatever." But we're being forced to look at these other offers only for financial reasons, not in any way, shape, or form because we prefer to go there. That's generally the argument. Did you?
I was just going to ask if you sent another letter back to Harvard saying if you want to stand on a double legacy.
Yeah. No, she was a Yale double legacy.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
I'll steal one.
Exactly.
Right, you want a feather,
Another
a feather in your cap.
80 grand.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Can you pay her to go to school? Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Is there any time where writing a letter like that is not a good idea, or is that always a good idea to force
You
them
know what?
to negotiate?
Diane?
Yeah.
Is that client?
It
So
all
funny.
it would really depend
She's probably watching on Facebook.
on how and the tone in which you write it. And it sounds like, well, of course I'll be nice, but people will write things like what I've also cautioned you about putting in the special circumstances section. Some people will come off as sometimes Long Islanders, New Yorkers are viewed a little aggressive, a little harsh, and a
That's
little
offensive.
Ungrateful. And
So
what
be
orifice do you
respectful
think I'm
in your
going to get
letter
this
and
from?
your wording.
Yes,
and
be
professional.
thankful and grateful.
Grateful.
Right. No.
I think the
No sass.
No too. Right.
Yeah. So
Too
I
free.
think the what we definitely don't recommend is the phone call like that. It's better in writing. You can follow it up with a phone call. It's okay. I mean, you're like, I know we're just meeting, but you're not that type of person. As opposed to a I won't name names, but the doctor near where our office is, who said something along the lines of, "What orifice do you think I'm going to pull this money out of, and please justify why I should spend the extra
Right.
$25,000 to send my kid to Emory when Tulane is offering blah blah blah." And I think what he got, his response was like, yeah, basically that. So that doesn't
Not
usually
helpful.
work. Yeah, we don't recommend that.
By the way, so too with your child's essay.
That's a
Same
whole other
point
can of
class
worms.
today on
Same
essay
point.
It's a
and
whole other can of worms.
But it's the same idea because
Yeah.
we had a client who, grade and scores wise, she was overly qualified for a school on her list. She was a shoe-in. It was a safe school. And she had written an
That was
essay
that was a long
we
time
did
ago.
not assist her with.
Yeah.
I need to say
There's
that.
another class for you, Erica.
And she came off like she was the savior of the universe. She really,
Pompous.
yes, she really overinflated, let's say,
Wasn't concerned with the word
a
length
two-time
limits either.
babysitting situation.
She had a lot to
It
give.
was like 6 pages
And
long.
it's very
Massive
transparent.
650. She did 13 something.
Oh.
The admissions committee, they see right through it. There's no place for it. Keep that in mind when you're writing the essay.
That is actually brings up a very good point. There is this is even surprising to me. We have two recent grads who were, recent admissions officers at the University of Chicago, which admits like 7% who work for us and help us with essays. And I interview them every once in a while for our stuff to send out to our clients. And they went over and over again in detail about how important it is when they are trying to get to know a kid and see if they'd be a good fit in that school. So if a kid comes across as pompous, or the essay clearly was written by a committee of professionals or family members who think they're professionals, or whatever, that will almost always be revealed. Same thing, and I'm going to say it again, Pearl, okay, so don't stop me, you know where I'm going with this. Same thing when your child who is a junior, who all of a sudden becomes what because she doesn't want to be associated with me when I say this, what I refer to as the born-again junior, the badge, which really equates to a kid who's got no extracurriculars or bent toward helping his or her fellow man and womankind, all of a sudden,
has an epiphany.
all
in
the
the church.
Yep, and has a special event that mommy usually, it's never daddy, but sometimes will choreograph behind the scenes, which means do 95% of the time, and it's usually like some sort of sports event that the kid likes to play, and it raises money for something. And it's great that they do that. But when there's no evidence of that, and all of a sudden, badge, born again junior comes out, admissions officers understand that that's exactly what's going on there to look good for college. And the reason she hates it, because she physically starts moving away from me when I say this, is because it happened with people that we know and we're friendly with.
It happens all over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it could be anywhere.
But it did happen in our district, and.
Hey, be quiet. I didn't say that.
Okay.
No. You're so indiscreet. Yeah. So, all right. I think can I handle these evaluation forms? If there's any other questions, we got to skedaddle here. I'm sure you guys
On
have
that
had
note,
enough.
can you talk about not doing the badge, but what are the things that you need to have your child doing to stand out?
Non-badge.
Non-badge activities.
So.
Oh, you're so tall.
Yeah. Okay, so understanding that getting into college is, again, 60% grades and 40% other stuff, it behooves everyone to focus on that other 40%. And we wrote a book about that called The Incomparable Applicant, and which, of course, I didn't bring any today because I don't know why.
Why not?
I would have. I'm unprofessional, I guess. I have no.
So you're gonna send it out to us, right?
PDF
file?
Amazon.
Yeah. PDF file?
Amazon. Great gift idea. Holidays are coming up.
Applicant.
Incomparable Applicant, yeah. And when I say holidays, I mean all the Jewish holidays, Columbus Day. You'd surprise some people. Be probably out of character. Not kidding. So the gist of it is that you don't want to do the same thing that everyone else does. It's very easy to do the same stuff everyone else does. High school's like that in general. So is adulthood. Peer pressure, but you're not going to get too far if you brag about being a National Honor Society, because 80% of any given class makes a National Honor Society. That is the participation trophy of high school right now. So so there's a difference between being in a club or being a leader or founding a club. That's typical, less typical, and atypical. You want to think about atypical activities, consistent atypical student activities, CASA, C-A-S-A. It's most kids don't have a job, but if they get a job, that's pretty good. If they start a business, that's atypical. There's all sorts of ways to do things. What I would recommend, though, as a governing principle, is do not force your kid, do not feel like you're pounding a square peg into a round hole, into them having to do something totally unrelated to any interest or career or otherwise. It's much better to take something that a kid likes to do and plus or accentuate that, because it takes work, and a lot of competitive kids have no time. They're barely sleeping. They don't have lunch in school, and you have to do other stuff. So I'll give you a good example. I'll give you a bad example. I'll start with the bad example because they both involve the same family. The bad example: we have a client in the South Shore in Nassau County, and she and I have been struggling with her twins, who are very introverted. Robotics and engineering type kids, and we're just trying to, not really, but attempting to get them to step out of their comfort zone, which is very important, for this type of growth. And college application process, I guess, is a subset of that. and they're thinking about all these other things that other kids and families in their district had done. And I think I told you this. Every time I talk to her, Julie, is her name, she says, "Yeah, did I tell you about this?" It's always like, like Columbo when he's got, well, one more thing. And I said, you realize that the last 6 or 7 meetings and calls we've had, you've come up with something more that, another jaw dropper. So here's a bad example of something that even I never heard this one. Something bad that's supposed to look good for college. I do not recommend trapeze lessons. Did not make that up.
It's real.
Really?
Swear to God,
Really?
there was someone in her district that is doing trapeze lessons for college or going to clown college, Ringling or something. I don't know. But in their case, they started, and this took probably 6 months of back and forth. They started these twins, the introverted twins, started teaching younger kids at the middle school about robotics and doing experiments with them, and that was kind of neat. And then the summer was coming last year, and they had to stop. And I said, well, why should you stop? If these kids are still interested in this, why don't you offer a program over the summer? So they turned that into a business. They donated the class fees to the robotics team to help build awareness for that. And what was even greater is that the Long Island Herald took a story on them. These awkward introverted kids are now building confidence, and they love doing it, and it was just fantastic. And it kind of snowballed from there. So everyone has something, as far as I'm concerned, and you just have to be willing to kind of probe. And sometimes it doesn't happen in one meeting, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time.
Is it okay if their interest has nothing to do with what they want?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because most kids, there's a whole, and we don't have time for this at all, but we do a whole careers and majors counseling type of thing first, and that's how we pick schools. Because for us, college is great. It's 4 years. It's really about 40 years after college. We prefer to focus on the 40 and then backward plan. Again, I wish we had time for that right now, but it's okay to be interesting and well-rounded. Well, I don't know about well-rounded anymore, but it's okay to be interesting and have other interests besides just narrow stuff. Quick question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about the FAFSA
Amazon.
and the other.
Oh,
Yeah.
did I mention that? Yeah.
What's your percentage in that? In Amazon?
She has $3. Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Now, what about, are there websites or locations to look for outside of the FAFSA funding? Okay, I'm going to give you an example. My son's in marching band. He's into robotics. He's earning his Eagle. Okay.
That's great.
So privately, where do we look? I know there's one website I was given about information, but I don't know if there's others that you have to offer.
Okay.
That are out there just to
Yeah. All right. So let me. No, I won't cut you off. Let me give you the answer about looking for scholarships on websites. Right? Is that
Right,
what you're talking about? Okay. So there's sites like CAPEX, CAPPEX. There's an app and a site called Scholly, SCHOLLY. There's a lot of sites.
Okay.
What I want to point out though is that I don't know if you we haven't talked about this, but I don't know anyone who has spent hours, days, weeks, and months on those sites and actually come up with money.
No.
I just don't. I personally don't know that, and we've been in this field for years and years. Generally speaking, what happens is you turn up a whole lot of stuff that doesn't apply to you, and it's a rabbit hole. But I know people get money. I just don't personally know anyone.
Or if you are qualifying for, let's say, some need-based aid, we've seen kids apply for local Kiwanis Awards, Rotary Club, and they get $500. They cobble together, a couple $1,000.
that kind of stuff pays for books and things like that.
If you're awarded a need-based aid and then you get
From
all
the college.
from the college, and then you get some of these other outside scholarships, often the school will reduce your award by the amount you've gotten from these outside scholarships because you are demonstrating less need with those additional outside
Right.
You have to
scholarships.
tell them.
Well, it's a
Well-
federal form, and you're signing it.
Well, they ask you afterward too. It's part of your obligations.
Correct.
But just to round out the discussion, we have a college scholarship strategy person who helps kids identify the programs that work for them, the thing that they're eligible for. But I'll tell you, which sounds great, and she happens to be great, and she's got a guarantee and all that she's part of our firm. What I'll tell you though, the downside is that it involves work from the kids. And they have to be willing to write essays and do projects and go on interviews and all that, in addition to the college applications, the college essays, and all that other type of stuff. So generally speaking, it is not right for most kids. So I think we have maybe referred 10 people into that program this year, and they all have scholarships, a minimum of 5 to 10 scholarships each that they're eligible for, between $500 to several $1,000s. But very few have actually gone through what's necessary to do to apply, even though actually our person is coaching them through it. It's just very hard. So I'm not saying don't do it, just know what you're getting into. So much of this process, other than being strategic, is figuring out how to marshal your resources. How much time do you have? How much time do you have to visit 25 colleges? That you can't even afford if you don't know what the college is going to cost you. Why should you just run around, let alone whether you can get in or not? So there's, that seems to be a big issue too. But I think we should wrap up here. Jen,
Yeah. So to wrap up, a couple very quick points. Andy got onto my radar about 9 months ago. So I've been watching the Tuesdays at lunchtime Facebook seminars that he does.
College Talk Tuesday.
College Talk Tuesday. He does. If you send back if you give us the form, we get onto his mailing list where you'll be able to see almost weekly something you can tap into. And I will tell you, I've seen the same presentation 3 or 4 times because I go on a lot, and every time it's something new. So we could have spent 8 hours today, and it just would have been like getting the first date going.
Just to be clear, new but not inaccurate.
Correct.
We're not contradicting ourselves. Okay.
No, always more. And the other thing is, if you think you're too early, you're not. Because financially, I went to my accountant. I have a rental piece of property. What can I do about it? And none of the answers are good. Mm. So trying to figure out how to move that around and whatnot. I've got 2 years to get that right.
Right.
If I don't get that right, where your primary home doesn't count, the secondary, even though it's a commercial property, it's privately owned. It's not in a business, and 100% of it is going to come back. And there's no way I'm going to get a dime if it stays there. So, and that's going to take a little bit of time to move that around and do what has to be done. So, you can never be too early. And with your kids, you can never be too early. Pete, who's here, he's a scout leader with I here at St. Pat's, and Pete's son just recently made Eagle. My son's
really
working on Eagle, and I will tell you, these kids, they are good, well-adjusted kids. None of these kids that we're meeting are good public speakers or confident when they stand up. Have them practice. It's the same thing writing out the essays. The earlier you get started, get them out of the comfort zone to do the types of things that we all did when we were kids because you had to. Now the kids are more insulated. They don't have to do it. So start early and just keep pushing it. And Andy and Pearl are a great resource. Obviously, it's a business that they're running. There's plenty. They're very much of the persuasion that they give, and anything you can get out of it, great. But we also have had a lot of people, over 45 people that are here in the seminar in the summer, that have followed up with them because they find that the value add is absolutely there for them because they want to make sure this is a lot of money. It's going to be, besides your home, the second biggest expense you're ever going to have is your kids going to college. You don't want to screw it up over a couple $1,000s of getting the right information versus not.
All right. Well, thank you. So if you do want to talk to us one-on-one, normally it's a $249 fee for a strategy session, a college strategy session phone call. If you turn in your form that we just handed out, the blue one today, and you get on our, you book us. We're not gonna talk in a week, but if you book us within a week, then we're gonna put up the. Yeah. So you can also, if you want to do it now, you can go on your smartphone and go to booklockwood.com, and we waive the fee for anyone who attends this workshop. And the types of questions we can talk about, or the stuff that we touched on today. Meaning, can my kid qualify for any type of scholarships? How much they expect me to be able to pay? Can I do anything to improve my eligibility? I don't even know if we're looking at the right colleges. Can you help me, with that? Can my kid get in anywhere? All those types of things. It just, help. I don't know the right questions because I'm overwhelmed. If we get that one a lot too. So whatever it is, just book us within the week, and we'll waive the fee. And we can talk about anything. It's a call. You can dial in.
We don't need to speak this week.
You can have a spouse from a remote location dial in also at the conference line, anyone you want to have on the call. So thank you very much, and Jim, as always, appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Thanks for coming.
Bye,
Thank you so
Facebook.
much.